Hey everyone, Tyler with Make Magazine, and recently we got a chance to do something pretty cool. It's a chance to chat with some of our favorite makers and have the audience ask live questions to them, and we started out with one of our favorites, with Jimmy DiResta. Now, this video is a little different from what we normally do on our channel, and it's also pretty long, so we're interested in seeing if you want to see more of this type of video or you'd rather not. So just let us know in the comments below. And of course, we also have plenty more of these coming up. We're going to be doing them every other week. You can check them out on our Twitch TV channel, which is twitch.tv/make. We're also going to be publishing these as an audio-only podcast, so if you want to listen to it like that, you can do that too. You can find the links for that in the description below. So let us know what you think in the comments below. We're really excited about this series and we can't wait to do the next one, and we can't wait to hear what you think of them. Hey everyone, my name is Tyler Weingartner. Welcome to the first episode of Meet the Maker, and I am joined by Jim Burke.
How's it going, everybody?
Jim Burke, what do you do here?
I'm a graphic designer for Make Magazine, so if you have a copy of Make, I help design those pages. I'm also a founder of the Power Racing series, which if you've been to a maker fair and seen tiny electric cars race until they burst into flames, I'm responsible for that as well.
Excellent. But really, we are here to introduce our first guest on Meet the Maker, which is Jimmy DiResta.
Hello, everybody. Am I coming through clear?
You are coming clear. You are coming through clearly. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm sorry my screen is like trying to find the right focal point. It's trying to find that. So I'm trying and stay still as much as possible to avoid that.
Excellent.
I'm doing great.
Good. Glad to hear it. So Meet the Makers is a series where we want to have a rotating guest of makers and people who make incredible things or wonderful things or simple things, but they're getting out there and making stuff, and we want to talk to them about how they get started, their creative process, and anything that comes up and along the way. And also, this is a conversation that involves you out in the audience. So if you have any questions for Jimmy, ask away in the chat, and we will feed them through to him and make sure those get out to him. But anyways, I know Jim has a ton of questions to kind of get the conversation started. So why don't you go away with that, Jim?
All right. Well, thanks for everyone for joining us. Jimmy, we were talking just a few minutes earlier about some of the creative process. Why don't we just kind of dive right into that?
Sure.
I believe that the last thing we just said was that perfect is the enemy of good. And I really think that as a whole represents your body of work. And you were telling me that it didn't dawn on you until people told you that.
Yeah, it wasn't until fans started making that comment in my thing, as a compliment. And if anybody follows me on my podcast, you know that perfection has always been a struggle for me. I've just come to the realization that it's not in my DNA. It's not in my DNA to be perfect. When you see guys using feeler gauges, and when I work my Bridgeport milling machine and my South Bend lathe, I work it like I'm working an Etch-a-Sketch, and that drives machinists crazy. But I can't get it perfect, no matter how hard I try. I'm obviously not trained in it, and if I did go to a formal machinist training school, I probably would be better at it. But my approach to mostly any project is let me get started and see where it goes. Things could change while I'm in the process of making it, and they can go bad while I'm in the process of making it. And what I'm looking for throughout the whole project is a reference point. Basically like, oh, this looks good, but this looks better. This was my original idea, but when I put this next to this looks much better. Let me go in that direction. And if I lock myself into a SketchUp, or if I lock myself up into a CAD drawing, I don't leave myself those opportunities. I find a lot of makers who get themselves locked in line with a CAD drawing that they spend several weeks developing. Then they go to the material, and it's a completely different universe, but they kind of stay steady on that path. To me, that's a little intimidating. For me, it's more in my blood to be able to just jump right in and start working on.
So you see a creative process already into the making process, and that you want to have that ability to almost kind of play with the material and get a better idea or understanding of what you're doing in the physical world.
Yeah, a lot of people tell me this, and it's a description I've welcomed, is that I'm sculpting with materials. I'm not necessarily building. So when you see me sculpting with wood or steel or metal or aluminum or brass, I'm literally sculpting the object I have in my mind and finding that shape in space. And because I'm a little bit more flexible than a lot of makers, I look for opportunities to improve my design as I see it. And so that's why I say I'm sculpting, as if everything around me is just clay. and I could sculpt with that clay.
So when was the first time you discovered that flexibility in your creative process? Did it just happen to be that way, or did you learn after having like a few years of rigid structure with woodworking that you discovered?
It's just how, it really, I totally blame my dad in a good way, because my dad just started sticking materials in front of me. The very first thing he ever did was he'd stick a box of scraps in front of me with a hot glue gun. And that was just to shut me up. That was my version of being plopped in front of the TV. He would give me a box of scraps and a hot glue gun and say, here, go crazy. And I did that before I played with Legos. And so I never really got into Legos the way some people are totally stuck on Legos. So I got more into like really making things before connecting Legos in that manner. So I was always in that idea of like, oh, this is just a pile of scrap. Let me see what I could make out of it. And I definitely blame my dad for that.
Yeah.
And then as I got more skilled, and he started introducing me to like the jigsaw and hand tools. And I mean, I was using a radial arm saw when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. I never used the table saw in my home shop with my dad because we never had one. We always had the radial arm saw. We ripped and did cross cuts on a radial arm saw, a 9-inch Delta that's still in my mother's basement. Since I could remember, that's all I've ever used until I got to be about 17, 18. And then I went and bought my own table saw.
Right, and you were telling me earlier, and I believe it was in previous interviews as well, that your father gave you your first set of woodworking tools, and it took you a few years to even extrapolate what you wanted to do.
Yeah, well, specifically, I grew up in a shop, so I had woodworking tools around me my whole life, literally since I'm old enough to. I remember, I was just telling my friend this the other day, my dad used to shut the shop down so that none of us could play with the tools. I had 2 brothers and a sister, but my sister was always way too young at this time. So me and my brothers and all of our friends, the little mischievous boys we hung out with, were always causing trouble. My dad would shut the electric off in the shop so none of us could play with the tools, specifically the crosscut saw and the bandsaw. And so I remember standing on a box holding a stick to be able to turn that electrical light, that switch which was in the ceiling. So we used to have to jump up with a stick to swat the electric on so that we could use the shop when my dad was at work, because he was a fireman. He would spend the night away. And we knew we had until 7 in the morning to get the shop back to normal before he got home. So he didn't know we were in there. And so that's how little I was. I used to have to jump up with a stick to turn that electric light on 7 feet in the air. It was on the ceiling of the basement ceiling. And so I had all those tools at my disposal my whole life. But when I was about 15, 16, he gave me a full set of carving chisels, and that intimidated me. I was like, "You mean what do you think? You think I'm going to be able to make an eagle's wing or an eagle head out of a blank chunk of wood? There's no way I could do that." And I really had no desire to do that. I was like, there's no way I could accomplish that, so I'm not even going to try. And so that bundle of sculpting chisels or carving chisels, well, let me go back a little bit. We used to always spend the summers in Mystic Seaport, Connecticut, and we would always go to the wood carver, the guy who would do like all the fancy stuff for the wood chips. It was kind of like Colonial Williamsburg. You had all the traditional woodworkers there, and we would always spend time watching the wood carver. So my dad thought that that's what I wanted to do. And I did, but when he get the chisels in front of me, I was like, oh my God, I can't use these. I don't know what to do with them. And they sat there until I was about 19, 20. That's when I very first started to use them. So they were my precious chisels. I always kept them in the same spot, but I never touched them because I just never thought I'd be able to do anything with them because I was intimidated.
What made you finally get over that fear?
I started well, on MTV, I saw, I think it was Steve Vai was using a guitar in a video when David Lee Roth did a video called "Crazy from the Heat," an MTV generation. That's where I'm from. So it was like 1988, and there was this guitar cut with flames, and I remember freeze framing it. We videotaped it, and I freeze framed it, and I literally drew the same guitar on this freeze frame screen. And this is 28 years ago, and I drew it on paper, and then I cut it out on the bandsaw. And when I looked at it, the profile of this guitar shape, I was like, wow, that's really cool. And it was just a flat chunk of 2-inch thick wood in the profile of this like flamey guitar. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if it had some depth to it? And so that's when I really just started. I said, you know what? Let me break the surface and start playing around. And then a local friend of mine came to me and he said, actually, let me go back one. So the very second guitar I made like a skull stretching out of the end. And so that was the one where I used the chisels for the very first time. I wanted like some elasticity So what happened was the concept just trumped all my fears. Like I had a really good concept and I had a really good vision. I mean, I was getting more training as an artist at that point too. I was in the School of Visual Arts. And so once I had a vision, I just wanted to get there, and I just immediately went to the chisels. It wasn't like, oh, what is the very first thing I need to do? I had the idea that was so strong that I just knew that I needed those tools to do it. And so the very first thing I ever carved was this stretched guitar. If we were in my shop, it's hanging on the wall in my workshop. I made that 28 years ago. So
basically, it comes really down to a project that kind of pushes you beyond that threshold of fear almost. Like I can only imagine that most of the people that you encounter, a lot of them are first time, in woodworking. It's the first time ever approached.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I've noticed in a lot of comments and a lot of feedback, or even a lot of the questions that come out to you, is that they're stuck on, well, where do I start? How do I start? And I think right there illustrates a really great point, is that it really comes down to a project that you're motivated enough to try something outside of your comfort zone.
And that was like my second or third guitar that I made. The first one I made was that one that was just a simple bandsaw profile. Then I experimented a little bit. And then I made that one, which is it's like the stretchy skull coming. So it's like a metamorphosis. It's a regular guitar, and then at the end, the stretchy skull comes out of it. And then from that one, a friend of mine who was a local band lead guitar player asked me, he said, I love this. Can you do it, but even crazier? And so we came up with a sketch, and then I really started challenging myself as far as like the depth and it just was a real natural, it came natural to me. And one of my big inspirations was just watching and looking at Egyptian art and Roman art and architecture and seeing, every piece of every Roman building had pieces of sculptural architecture in it. And I was studying all that at the time at school. And so I really got into the idea of like relief carving and a little bit of carving in the round, but obviously all the guitars involved just relief carving on the face. And I just got into the idea of challenging myself and trying to figure it out.
I've got a quick question I want to jump in from the chat here. A fellow here has a old brass-backed tenon saw that has, as they described, years of grime and rust on it, and they want to restore it. Right. Any advice for that person?
Well, one thing I learned from a fan, which I just did in my newer video called 4 Tools. I restored 4 tools I got at the flea market, and a fan said, he watched me sanding something back to life, and he's like, you're killing me. He goes, just stick it in white vinegar and all the rust and patina will go away. And I did that. And now that's what I do. I stick something that's rusty in white vinegar, and the white vinegar will eat away the oxidation. So you got to soak it overnight, maybe 24 hours.
And you've been doing a lot of stuff with your letterpress machine, which from what I heard you describing, it sounds like you basically brought that back from being a solid hunk of metal.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a big enough bath, I could have put that into a big bath of vinegar, but unfortunately, I had to work every individual joint. And that thing, that's a funny story. I don't know how much I've talked about it publicly, but a friend of mine who was slowly getting into letterpress, but reading about it, and that's something we could talk about too, is when people read about something and then never do it. That's a big trolley thing when people get so into the idea of learning about everything before they ever touch the tool. Anyway, so my buddy was into letterpress. He never owned a machine, but he said to me, hey, do you ever see any letterpress machines in your travels in the Catskills? And I said, as a matter of fact, there's one sitting in front of an antique shop, and I never, ever stopped to look at it. I just used to see it, and I'd say, that's either a coffee grinder or a printing press. I never knew what it was exactly because it had this big flywheel on the side. And so when he finally spoke to me, I had been seeing it for about 7 or 8 years. So I finally stopped and took a close look at it. And I was surprised to see that it wasn't missing any pieces. Everything was still there. And so I made a deal with the owner. The shop was closed. It belonged to the guy's dad. And he said, he was away in California. So I called the phone number, made a deal with the guy over the phone. And then he goes, all right, it's yours. Just go take it whenever you feel like it. So in my video, you see me throwing it on my truck, and somebody driving by stopped to help me and Taylor. And so when I got it back to my house, I realized the job I was up against. This thing had been out in the rain for 25 years. So it was literally so rusted, it was like one giant chunk of metal. And it's probably 75 moving parts, or maybe 50 moving parts. And they were all completely fused together. And I almost gave up. It sat in my driveway for about 10 months before I went back and attacked it, because I just couldn't figure out how to loosen the whole machine. It was just one rock solid, not moving thing. I was breaking it apart piece by piece, but then it got down to a couple of components that I could not get apart because of the rust. But just working on it, keeping it soaked with oil, then after time I was able to get it moving. And that's the most recent video I put up of me actually printing 6 years later.
Yeah, we're actually just taking a look at the video right now. It looked like you're using a combination of like oil and some heat and some little percussive maintenance as well.
Yeah, those, like now when you see a really tidy, good, well-kept printing press, those bolts are usually just hand tight. You could, if you're good grip, you could just loosen them by hand because everything is meant to just move smooth and cleanly. So those bolts, I couldn't even get the bolts off without, risk breaking the nut and bolt itself. But I was able to get everything apart with a lot of heating and cooling and heating and cooling, and that expands and contracts the metal and then breaks that bond until you're able to break it apart.
And what eventually got the those last pieces loose? You said you had them soaked for a little bit longer, but what was like the final moment where that released?
Well, it's funny. I had a realization. I took the flywheel off because it was the most sexy part of the machine, and I brought it back to the city and I painted it and I got it all buffed up, and it was kind of like polishing the hood ornament before I restored the car. It was so excited about this like antique flywheel. And so the flywheel sat around all buffed and shiny, waiting for the rest of the machine to catch up with it. And then I had this epiphany where that if I took the Taylor Forest, everybody, Taylor, say hi to the world. So I had this epiphany that if I took that flywheel and I used it to move the gear train, as a counterweight to just kind of get the gear train rocking and rolling, I put the flywheel back on and I just slowly started rocking it, and it literally was moving like 1/8 of an inch and then 1/4 of an inch and then an inch and then 2 inches, and then all of a sudden I made one full revolution. And that epiphany happens while I'm on camera. It really, that moment in time when I'm like, if I just move this a little bit and then it moves more, that all happened right when the camera was rolling. Taylor was filming me. And that was the breakthrough. So now I know. And the way I got to that, and this is a stupid story that nobody would ever ask me to tell, I had an old tractor sitting in the backyard. And the tractor, I ended up giving it away. It needed too much work. So I had an old 1939 tractor sitting in the yard, and the motor was seized. And so I went to a junkyard, and the guy at the junkyard goes, oh, you know how you unseize those motors? You put it in gear, jack it up, and you turn the back wheel of the tractor, and you get the motor going from the back wheel, because you have the whole kinetic energy of the big giant rear wheel, and that will loosen up the motor. And so I was trying that the whole time. Wow. The printing press was 100 feet away, and it never occurred to me to do the same thing with the printing press. And then one day I gave the tractor away, and I'm sitting at the printing press going, I could do the same exact thing. All you got to do is jiggle the flywheel, and it'll move the rest of the motor. So
that is a testimony to side quests right there. You don't expect it to actually, you end up in, situations in life that you never expect to actually have a payoff. It's just like, well, that was kind of weird. I learned something, but I don't know where this applies. And then years down the line, you're right. Sitting there and it just pops in your head. So it's not a stupid story unless it's stupid like a fox. It's a great story.
No, I know. That's what I mean. I mean, it's like these dumb little things. That's why I'm like very open to like all things. I'm never like, wait a minute, that's stupid. I'm like, oh, let me see what this is. I try not to stick my nose in the fire. And if I'm like, oh, this is curious. What's going on here? Because you never know what you're going to walk away with. You walk away with a couple of little bits of information that's just in the memory bank, in the vocabulary. And then one of these days you're like, you can stand in front of a group of people and look like a major genius because you listened to some old guy on the train one day tell you how something works.
Yeah, it's really, that's life. A bunch of side quests that you didn't expect actually pays off in the end narrative.
Yeah, I mean, that was a little bit of my experience in going back to just kind of getting familiar with tools, is that when we had our workshop, it drove me nuts to, I mean, I'm not a big workshop guy or anything like that, but, we would have our workshop and I would just occasionally just need to turn a tool on and use it just to see what it feels like to use it and see what inspires me creatively of how I might use that later on. And I might not have an immediate use for it, but I have an idea of how it feels in my hands, and then that might feed into a bit of something creative later on.
For sure. I mean, that's so when I'm shopping at the flea market, I'm walking back and forth at the flea market looking for tools that I could put into a video or tools that'll inspire a build. Now obviously the focus of my life is trying to get some good video content, so I'm always looking for a cool tool. And I mean, that was also a very early impetus for the printing press. I'm like, wow, if I get this thing going, this is going to look just so cool on camera. And I mean, obviously I got 4 videos out of that.
Yeah, for sure. I actually had one other question from the chat at the moment. How often do you change the MDF on your workbenches, and why do you prefer it to using plywood?
Plywood splinters, and it makes a bit of a mess, and MDF just slowly deteriorates. It kind of turns into powder, and that's why I like MDF better. And plywood, the end chips, and it gets you get splinters. I got a splinter once through the palm of my hand that came out the back of my hand. It went between these 2 knuckles, and it didn't actually come all the way through the skin, but it was just a bump. So I try to avoid plywood when I don't need. I mean, of course, I use it all the time, but when it's on the edge of a bench, that's why I use the MDF. And I when it gets really messed up, I flip it, and then once both sides are screwed up, it goes in the rack, and then I get another one. I've saved about 5 tabletops at this point. Everyone says I should sell them as artwork. So one of these days I'll do something with them.
I've got a nerdy reason for also liking MDF on a workbench surface. I've got this little camera trolley, like a little benchtop dolly system, and it just rolls a lot smoother on MDF when I want a detailed moving shot than on plywood.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much, good for capturing. For those of you who are out there, not only just diving knee deep into woodworking, but also, making your own videos and putting your own content out there for other people to see. And that kind of leads into one of the other things I wanted to, discuss was content creation and the idea that a lot of people, I hesitate to say that we're in an age where we have more information before, but I do say the accessibility is the best it's ever been. And I feel like the big draw and allure to your videos is that people never get to see a full process of any small object or any object in their life. And having that compressed DiResta video that just shows from start to finish what's going on is almost like, it's like you're getting, the actual code of any object you see. You're actually seeing, the whole breakdown of what it takes to make something. And
it's funny. I never thought of it like that, but that's true.
Yeah, whenever I'm looking at any artists or any other things for what I do, I anytime I see a process or someone who uploads a design process, I'm I'm grabbing it. I'm going, this is incredibly valuable. I feel like I'm hoarding it. It's insane.
Yeah.
But when you see that, you get to see little tiny tricks and stuff that is 20, 30 years of experience boiled down into 2 seconds of something. And you realize that those things, you grab the things that, stick out to you, and then you try them out yourself. And were there any other video series that you've seen that when you're watching, you're just like, wow, it just blown away, and then you're running back to the shop to try them out yourself?
I guess my big inspiration was, for me, as a young boy, watching the factory shots on Sesame Street when they would show the cans being filled and the cans being capped. That was always my favorite part of Sesame Street, was watching when every once in a while they would just cut to cans being capped, and I'm like, wait, I want to see more of that. And forget the Muppets, I want to see more cans. And then that led to, years later, How It's Made, which was a series that I always had conceived of, but I had no accessibility to actually make a TV series at the time. And so the show How It's Made that ultimately came out, I guess it's on, it seems like such a generic show. You don't know who the host is. You don't need to know who the host is. It's just factory visits and showing the process. And I know, and we all know, when you watch it, they how to make a car. Oh, you make the frames, you put the wheels on it, then you put the doors on it, and then it's done because we got to go to commercial. They leave out so many steps on certain things. But those really were my inspiration, is just factory. And then personally, my own personal experiences, I went to I must have done at least 150 factory visits from 92 to 2008, my own personal visits for my client work. I used to go to China, and I would go to the factories, I'd go to the tool rooms, and we would do first shot tests. I would design products. We'd do first shots off the injection molding, and then I would test them, and then we would make corrections, and we'd do second shots and correct them until we got a refined product. And then also all throughout it, just doing cost reduction, saying, if we combine this and this tooling and we get rid of that. So all that went into, the slurry, my slurry. This is my whole life. And now when I sit down and I go to do a video, I think, okay, where do I start? What's the next process? What's the next thing? Is it really worth showing me palm sanding for 20 minutes? No, let me just palm sand one thing, flip it, and then everyone knows it's implied that I sanded the whole thing. And of course, I sanded off camera. A fan asked me the other day, who's now starting his own YouTube channel. He said, my cameras are like smoking hot because I'm in Vegas and it's 110 degrees outside and my cameras have been on all day long. How do you avoid this? I say I turn my cameras on for like 5 minutes every 2 hours. I just show the key spots. I don't show the entire process. I mean, people kind of assume going away. But just like keyframes in cartooning and keyframes in motion graphics, I show the keyframe of what it is I'm building. So I'm showing all the keyframes. And if there's a little bit leading up to that keyframe and a little bit leading away from it, I show that as well. So there's no real reason to show the entire day of me walking around, answering my cell phone, getting a coffee, sweeping the floor. So that's why people often say, hey, when are we going to see live cameras in your shop? Probably never, because, if I leave my door open, a fan from Israel walks in and says, hey, what's going on? So, it's all boring stuff in between the fun and exciting building stuff. So
actually had a really quick, super valuable question from Twitter about shop process, which is, what's your go-to band that you listen to in the shop?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Howard Stern. No, I listen to Howard Stern a lot, but then I get into moods of heavy metal. Last couple months, I've been heavily into jazz. I love the Lounge Lizards, and so I recently, it's funny, I listen to podcasts. I listen to WTF, Mark Maron, and a couple of other kind of podcasts like in Hollywood like that. And Mark Maron had on John Laurie from the Lounge Lizards, and I completely forgot that he was one of my favorite bands. I also like him as a personality. And so I got into the Lounge Lizards lately. I listen to Lounge Lizards a lot. I listen to Nick Cave quite a bit, Johnny Cash, a lot of country music. It's weird. I mean, I'll listen to the comedy station a lot. There's a couple of comedy stations on Sirius I listen to. And old hip hop. So I listen to old school hip hop. I think it's called the Old School Hip Hop channel. I forget. And so I really, honestly, I like everything. I mean, there might even be a weird mood when I listen to opera on. Usually I don't have that on my iPod, but I listen to, what I do have on my iPod is some Beethoven, and I listen to that from time to time. I used to edit to Beethoven a lot. Actually, I would put this music into my edits, and I would just like to edit, to the rhythm of, say, like, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony or whatever.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of Chet Baker jazz.
Actually, there's kind of an interesting question, if not a little bit of a selfish one. When I'm working on the magazine and when we're laying out pages and that, I usually, during the process of figuring out where things go and what order and, what way to present it best, I'm usually listening to metal music or just music in general or something. Mm-hmm. But when I switch into the actual application process, I kind of switch over to podcasts or more spoken word. Does that happen to you at all? Do you have
Absolutely.
a transition? Yeah.
Yeah, me working at the lathe is completely associated with podcasts. So when
amazing.
I'm at the lathe,
okay, that's
when you see me when I'm doing like hundreds of ice picks at the lathe, or I just started my Canon build. I'm going to build a small model Canon. Anytime I'm at the lathe, I'm listening to podcasts because I can't be distracted with Motorhead or Iron Maiden or something like that. Just podcasts are just relaxing, especially one that I like, like NPR, where everyone has a relaxing, calming voice. I listen to, lately I've been listening to a lot of Young Turks. It's a growing YouTube channel. It's kind of like on News Sauce. Me and my liberal girlfriend, we listen to Young Turks quite a bit. The Young Turks YouTube channel and podcast. And I listen to Fresh Air quite a bit. And one of my favorite podcasts is Barry Katz's Industry Standard. It's all about behind the scenes of the entertainment business. And again, WTF is another favorite. And then there's a few, I listen to my friends' podcasts. I listen to Darbin from time to time. I listen to the guys at Faking It, Reclaimed Audio. Yeah, these are all friends and YouTube friends.
Right on. Yeah, I listen to podcasts all the time on my commute and in the car and things like that. And it drives my wife nuts because she's a big music nut. She's like, do you ever listen to music? And only when I'm working, because otherwise if I try to listen to podcasts when I'm working, particularly editing a video and I'm listening to somebody talking, shortest way to drive me crazy is hearing two different people talking about two topics I'm interested in at the same time. So.
You want to hear something funny? When I edit, my Sirius radio just broke in my apartment, but when I sit and edit at night, when it's like, say, I edit, say, between like 11 and 4 in the morning, I usually listen to headline news forensic files. And I just listen to and I know every one of them. I heard them all 1,000 times, but I'll be in the process of editing something, and in the background is like this murder mystery unfolding. And Taylor, my girlfriend, will come in and say, "How could you listen to yourself, whatever music I'm doing on the computer, and that at the same time?" I'm like, I don't know. It's just calming. I want to hear, where the gun came from. I want to hear who did, it's always the ex-wife, or the ex-husband.
Well, it's a creative flow thing as well, because when your brain is processing, these are different centers of the brain that are operating, in sync with each other. So when you're in the executing mode of doing a series of steps, your brain is like a certain part of your brain is kind of in idle almost. So it makes sense, and I'm really glad that you also had this, because some days I'm like, I wonder if other people do this, where they switch over to more talking narrative, where your brain is processing a story while you're working on a repetitive process that's calming, versus when you're creating an idea, you're listening to music, you're kind of riffing off of it.
Yeah, and it's funny. I from time to time for the liquor, my liquor clients, they hire me to do live builds, and I'll go to like Arizona Liquor Week and I'll build something. And one thing that gets my workflow going is just these guys love to play AC/DC and heavy metal, and every once in a while they let me DJ off my own iPod, and they've got a great PA system, and so I'm like blasting AC/DC, all this like all old heavy metal that I really like, and it really gets me going.
One of the more interesting things I've found lately, because I'm a part of video production I'm trying to teach myself more and more about, is color grading and just making subtle color changes to affect mood, and finding out how the music that I'm listening to has a profound effect, and I actually get a lot of inspiration just from how to shape the color of a shot based on that.
That's cool. Yeah. That is my nemesis, is trying to color match, because if you notice in some of my videos, I'm working with a GoPro, which is an overhead shot, and then I'm also working with a D7100, which is always nice and warm, and the GoPro is always nice and cold, so it's hard to get the two of them together. Sometimes I don't even try. It looks like two videos stitched together, because I get so frustrated. I try and overcolor correct the GoPro, and it just all the like oranges pop, and all the steel turns ice cold blue, and I just say, forget it. Looks good. People want this. It's the content that matters. So.
Yeah. That's a popular look now, anyways.
Yeah.
Had a quick question about from the chat about your upstate property. When did you acquire that, and what's the maker community like up there?
Well, it's interesting. I got that place in 2003, 2004. Bought it from a family friend, and I bought it with the sole purpose of moving up there within a year. And it's been 12 or 13 years, and I'm still waiting for the opportunity to move up there. And I have a pretty affordable rent in the city, and my workshop I have till 2018. And I'm giving myself till 2018 to finally vacate my New York City workshop. I want to get out of there because I want to alleviate my neighbors of my burdensome, I burden the building, with noise and paint smells and stuff. And so I want to get out of there just to give the building back to the tenants. I try my best to be a respectful neighbor, but, the people are directly above me, and, they deserve to not have me there. So now that my work is kind of more international and not necessarily just building a restaurant down the block, which it has been for a long time. So, my video content creation is becoming more financially rewarding, so I'm able to do that from anywhere. So we're trying to figure out how to get up there more full time.
And I imagine that means you'll have a significant increase of shop space as well.
Well, the problem is my shop space up there is a 20 by 20 space. My shop space in the city is 15 by 30. And so I just bought two shipping containers, which are basically filled with junk. So I'm going to try and figure out a way to make a shop. I had all plans of building this big shop. I've kind of had some false starts here and there. I raised some money to kind of get me about the drawings done, some engineering drawings done. But I realized as far as the whole kit and caboodle, I don't have all that money. So I don't want to start a construction site unless I could finish it financially. And right now I know I can't. So recently I made an attempt to buy a building near me. And then after going down the road, my financial advisor said, do you want to get into a $4,000 per month mortgage? You can't afford it. So I'm going to wait till I have some more cash, if that's possible, to just buy something when the time is right.
Well, actually,
and then in the meantime, I'm making between my shipping container and my little workshop upstate, and taking advantage of the weather, I could work outside quite a bit too. So
that kind of leads into one of the other things I wanted to cover, which is shop organization. And I remember.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I know, right? It's it's a mystery for me, who has a cluttered desk by the end of every magazine production cycle, and then I cathartically clean it at the end of every time we ship. But I also remember, I think very recently, you were talking about how you were inspired by Casey Neistat videos when it comes to like knolling and organizing your shop, but you never quite get all the way to that level of anal lining up everything, which is funny because I know Neistat was inspired by Tom Sachs because he worked out of the same shop and everything, and that video is online. It's been online for years, and I think that's everyone's like
always be knolling.
Goal. Always be knolling. It's the quiet goal that everyone's had. Whoever had a shop or any organizational space where they have to create something and they don't want to spend an hour finding something, but there's always that goal. And I've noticed with your creative work in that it's all about managing flow and about managing what you can get done in the most efficient way, or at least most efficient way that you can get something done. And it's kind of prevents you or me or other people that I know to organize everything, because that in itself is a project that would be inefficient. So you kind of do a balance, right? You kind of do this like, well, these tools are in this region, and you use the power of your memory to recollect exactly where that tool is. Do you think you'll change that with the new shop, or do you think it's just going to be, you're just going to go with it? And
I always joke, you remember the Pigpen character from the Peanuts?
Yes.
They always had like a fuzz of flies and dust around them. That's me. Everywhere I go, there's like a chaos of like a semi-organized pile of garbage. And that's, no matter where I go, it's like
the cloud will follow.
Default. Yeah, it's like it just follows me wherever I go. I try my best. And the other day, if you follow me on Snapchat, I cleaned up my upstate shop. I got it really nice and organized. I got it kind of knolled really well. I got some tabletop space to actually do stuff. And that was rewarding, because when I went back up there the other day, I was able to like jump right in and get started on my Canon. But yeah, there comes a time where we get the shop perfectly nice and knolled and cleaned and everything put away. And then we start a project, and I grab 35 hand tools and I place them all around the shop. And then at the end of every day, I say, let me at least try and put some of this away, so when I come in the morning, I'm not like walking into a ball of chaos. But that mess is, again, it's part of my DNA. It's part of me not being precise, and it's me not caring if it's 100,000th or 300,000ths in or out. I don't care. At this point, I can't keep trying because it's not going to work. So I put the video up of me drilling out my Canon the other day on Instagram, and I got some friends wrote to me personally. They're like, hey, it doesn't really look like it's centered. And I'm like, I promise you it's going to look like a Canon when I'm done. Don't worry about it.
and that's honestly kind of great. I mean, it's always good to like try to get to something, but you're not always going to, get to that level, and that's fine. If it comes down to getting the job done, what's more important is making the best use of that time, instead of just trying to find this perfect formula that will work for you someday in the future when you get around to it.
I mean, like, it's funny, as you build something, I really try to remember, and it's hard for me, but it's like, let me do the very best I can while I'm at this particular point of the project. And then I move over here and I say, let me try and do the very best I can while I'm at this point of the project. And every step of the way, I try and do the best I can, so that when I'm done, I have a project that had some really heart and soul put into it, as far as skill and caring and diligence. But sometimes it's a matter of like time and money, and I can only use these materials because nobody wants to pay for more materials, or so you do the best you can with whatever you attempt to use.
Got a quick question from the chat. I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, but MT Shafe wants to know if you feel like your brain is organized the same way your shop is.
It is. Absolutely is. I say yes to everything. I never write anything down. And just so you guys could tell the story about you and I trying to organize this moment in time, we had a little panic moment yesterday when I realized I kind of ganged up 3 things at the same exact time. Because I just say, yeah, no problem, come around, sure, yeah, whatever. Just I say yes to everything, and what always happens, and you guys out there can do this as an experiment. Maybe it's just me and my energy. Say yes to every single thing that comes down the road, and you'll find that 85% of the people that ask you or initiate an event or ask you for a date will bail anyway. I say yes to everybody, and they go, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it tonight. And I'm like, who is this? We were supposed to go to a barbecue tonight. I'm like, oh, no worries. I got something else to do. No worries. Completely forgot that I said yes, but everybody bails anyway. So people ask me all the time to do stuff and work on stuff, and I say, yeah, sure, let's do it. And then they call me, can't make it. Oh, remember last week I said I was going to do this? Can't make it. It's like, no problem. So in my world, everything always seems to kind of like come together.
Nice. Now, wait, I thought you wrote down everything on your hands.
I do, but sometimes it washes off and I forget. And lately I've been using a pencil. It doesn't write that well on skin.
Well, then, the act of erasing it, if it's not that important, it won't be retained elsewhere. It's a filtering system, really.
Well, right on. What next we got? Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about, and a lot of people are asking about YouTubers that you follow, but in particular, I want to take a moment to talk about something I'm still amazed by the two friends of yours pulled off, that Jocko and David, the 30-day challenge. That was great. I haven't watched all those videos. I'm kind of savoring it, because what do you think of something like that? Because I know, I also do a lot of the builds for the Make channel here, and I get frustrated with the way a build is coming together, and need to take a step back and recenter it. And something like, you don't have that flexibility on something like where you're making a video every day. So like, what happens when a build kind of isn't going your way? How do you get out of that? And I mean, obviously you don't give yourself the same time pressure. Maybe you do with saying yes to everything, but.
I mean, my only I have 2 time pressures every month, and that's working for Make. And, every week I'm like, this is going to be the week I'm going to have to say, guys, I'm going to skip a week. And I've done it a few times in the last 4 years. I've been like maybe 3 times where I had to skip a week. And we just pick it up, we skip a week. But those 2 time pressures, 2 times a month for you guys, and then once for Core 77. And then for my own channel, I just try and hit a video every once in a while on a Sunday. And sometimes it works out. If it doesn't work out, I'll just post something old. But I just walk away from it. And then I have to, you just have to be okay with the idea that I want to make this canon. It's all I want to do, but I can't, because logistically it's up there. I'm here. I'm going to have a chance to work on it over the weekend. But until I get there, I just have to put it out of my mind. And it's good though, because it gives me more time to study and soak up, some more information about the build and the historical aspects of some things I can't, I have to pay attention to. So if something becomes difficult, I just walk away from it and put it aside, and I always know that I could finish it. And I have a really good track record of finishing nearly every single thing I've ever started. So I trust in my track record as well. It's almost like I'm outside myself, and I'm like, don't panic. This is going to get finished. Remember, you finish everything you do. So it's like this dual negotiation going on in my consciousness.
Yeah. Another kind of offshoot to that, I know, looking at a lot of your videos and the process you take with it, and just visual discovery, as the audience member looking at, a lot of the way you work looks like play, and almost like you're discovering how the project is going to come together as you're working with it. And is that the case, or do you do a lot of research and testing before you go and work with a build, or you? I
certainly test it quite a bit. I'll play around, I'll experiment, and I'll do a little bit of research. Like, for instance, I keep bringing the Canon up as an example because that's something in the middle of. I looked online looking to find the right drill bit to drill out the center. I've talked to a couple of my friends about how I'm going to organize it on the lathe. I'm drilling the hole now. I might flip it over and how to center it. So I definitely experiment a little bit, but that reminds me of a funny story. When I was doing the TV show Hammered, there was a cameraman named Alex, and he and I kind of connected. He's a sweet guy, and Alex used to love filming me, and he would get so engrossed in the concept. He would literally trance out and film me, and I could just see how into it he was, and I vibed off of that. And in one particular day we were working together, he said to me, I could see. He goes, you just clicked in your mind. He goes, I could see it. It just clicked. And I laughed. I go, what do you mean? He goes, I'm starting to be able to tell the point where you jump into a project and you're just trying to figure it out. And then when you hit your stride and now it's just to the finish line. And when he said that to me about myself, I was like, oh, wow, that's funny. Now here's somebody who's just been watching me through a camera for 5 months, and he saw something in me that I really wasn't paying attention to. And so when he said that, he goes, I just saw that. He goes, I could see it from my point of view that you just solidified your vision in the middle of, and of course it's a different time frame. Working for TV, you have a few days. Most of the projects are just like hokey things just to make stuff for TV. And so, the projects aren't all that critical. But all in all, the concept is the same. It's like I delve into it, I start playing with it. But then once I like lock on the vision, it's like the hard work is done. And now it's just having fun making it.
Right on.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of power in having a deadline like that, whether, arbitrary or not. Just having a date where you're like, it has to be done by this day. Because otherwise, there's a lot of times where you'll just put something down and like, well, I'll get back to it later. And, for a lot of people, they don't get back to it later. And I think maybe, by having a project that maybe someone else is held accountable for, it can really help people get started with it. If it's for a birthday present or, someone needs, a favor at one of your friends, having that project where there's a discrete deadline to get it through can kind of push you over the bump where it's, too difficult or challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have another question from Twitter. Sounds like this is a guy who's kind of just getting started out on making a business of making stuff for people. Is this Eloy Eskid? Oh, boy. Anyhow, sorry, Eloy.
First attempt,
I've been using the what's your budget approach to working with customers, but he's afraid to scare them away. And if you have any advice for somebody who's like just getting started out with their business and knowing how to price their time and their work.
Well, it's funny. We just I'm looking at myself on Twitch.
Don't do that.
I won't do that.
Yeah.
If you guys, some of my fans noticed that I'm working with my friend Howard, who's appeared in some of my Snapchats. Howard is a friend of mine. We met through friends, and Howard is a financial guy. He's owned businesses. He's sort of he's a very smart financial guy. He's taken some big risks in his life, and he's won. So he's got some really good experience to share. And hanging around with me and David Welder, he wanted to start his own YouTube channel to just disseminate information about finances. But he also liked the idea. Hanging around with me and Dave, he started being like, "Wait, that's how you hold a hammer? Wait, how do you use a screw gun?" And so he's like, "These little bits of information should be online." And so we started a channel with him called Uncommon Sense, and we just shot. It's like a 20-minute thing of me and Howard and a couple of other friends sitting around discussing a day rate or how to get a business going. And that's going to be published soon. And I just watched an early cut of it. And there's really not much more than us hanging out in front of a camera talking. So there's really not much edited out. But it's really informative. I mean, I share my experience. Howard shares his experience. My friend Luke, who owns a company called Ray Door, which you could look up. It's a really a big company that makes sliding doors. Ray, Raydor. And so Luke talks about his experience starting Raydor. It's a 16-year-old company now. And I knew Luke, we were just like two East Village artists just bumming around. And then he's got this company now. And years later, I'm doing what I'm doing. And so we just share our experience about developing our business and also developing our day rate. And I very strictly say, figure out a day rate that works for you. There's many factors that go into that. Your experience, your confidence, your clients, your geographic location. You can charge $1,000 a day in Manhattan, but you can't charge $1,000 a day, in some suburb of Georgia, for instance, because it just doesn't have the economical equivalent. So it all depends on where you are, how big your overhead is. So, all these factors go into play. And always creep it up. Every time you get a new client, add a couple of more percentage points to that dollar amount. If you have a client that constantly gives you work, you want to give them a break because they're giving you more volume, volume discounts.
Right. I mean, that's something I found when I was freelancing in video production a couple of years ago, is just knowing the value of your time, knowing the value of the quality of the work you do. And that's something that can help you set your pricing no matter what you're doing, whether you're doing graphic design or you're making stuff for people or making videos for people. That's just a thing you need to know of what your time is worth.
And quality comes with repetitiveness. If you do the same thing 1,000 times, that's why baseball players and football players, they get good at what they do because they practice all the time. Same thing with a guitar player, same thing with somebody that carves wood, same thing with somebody that uses a bandsaw. It just comes with repetitive motion, develops confidence, and develops quality. So.
Yeah, and honestly, it's okay to scare away a client or two every once in a while. If you think the amount is too low, and you're getting that sinking feeling that this might take more of my time or more of my effort than I actually get a payoff. It's don't be afraid to say no. Keep putting out good work, and you will get clients that will understand your worth and value. And I think that's something that we, especially when starting off, I know definitely that's true for people in the design community, because they're constantly, and I'm not sure if it's in all industries, but there's a lot of people who undervalue their time, and they don't value their expertise on something, especially if they've been practicing for a really long time. And actually,
I also know this too with some friends. They're afraid to charge more because that means it's more of a commitment to you and the client.
Yes.
And it's like, hey, what do you want? I only charge $100. But if you charge more, you get over that intimidation factor, and you also will put more of yourself into it, and you'll want to please the client more because they're paying more. So charging more, there's a lot of factors. I mean, obviously you make more money. You develop more confidence. You develop more of a bond with your client. If things all go completely wrong, you could just hand the money back to them and say, I'm sorry we haven't met. Have a wonderful life. But, you can develop a camaraderie with somebody that could help you out. You could make, a lifelong friend client that will help you out, want to see you succeed.
That's true. If I remember correctly, it's one of those, when it comes to contracting somebody for example, house building and that, often the best people don't even have to advertise. And there's a reason that happens.
Because it's word of mouth.
Yep.
What's your approach to a job that maybe is just a little outside of your comfort zone? Maybe you, we all have. Do you price it the same thing you would normally? Do you lowball it a little bit because you're going to give yourself a little bit of time to learn and some more margin to work with?
I always try and make as much money as I can. Sometimes I price it wrong, but it's always a gamble. One thing I always do, and I urge other people to do it, because that's when the hurt feelings come into play, is if you give a number and then all of a sudden you think to yourself, I want more because I'm being taken advantage of.
Right.
That's just a matter of, and I said it on the stage in Maker Faire, I said it a few times, it's managing expectations between you and your client. Maybe you feel like you're being taken advantage of. Maybe they feel like they're being taken advantage of. It's managing expectations as you go. And, if you have an open dialogue with somebody, they say, hey, can we do this? I'll give you more money. And you go, oh, okay. If it depends on who it is. There's I've seen certain cultures don't get along well. This type of culture and this type of culture trying to negotiate a job, it just doesn't work well. So it all depends on the conversation you have with the person you're working with. So the friendship you develop, maybe you don't want to be friends with them. Maybe it's not worth the time. It all depends, And I jokingly say this, and it's really true. If you have lunch with a potential client and they're sitting there and they can't decide whether they want the salad, the Cobb salad, the Caesar salad, or if they want the chicken, and they're going back and forth with the waiter, and well, I'm not sure what I want. What is he? Oh, I don't know what I want. They're going to have that same conversation with you about the color of the paint of the thing they're building. So just be warned that somebody that's indecisive is going to drive you crazy and cost you money. So if you could see them being that way about any little thing, they're going to be that way about the color of the paint, the shape of the wood, the feeling of the way it looks, the shape, the color, the this, the that. That's how they are about everything in their life. So if they can't decide what color ice cream they want, they won't decide what color thing they want from you too. So,
Jimmy, what's the best wood to make an axe handle? That's one from Twitter. That's from Two-Sided Graphics.
Aluminum.
That's not a wood.
What?
That's not a wood.
Well, hickory is obviously the proven de facto. Hickory or ash. I've used ash a couple times because there's a guy near me that has ash. So hickory or ash is good.
Right on.
Axe handles break no matter what expensive fancy pants I actually buy or use. Axe handles break. It just depends on how quick they're going to break. You could have the most perfect, beautiful piece of hickory with a weird grain pattern in it, and after 20 whacks, the thing splits on a diagonal because nobody saw the inside of it. Axe handles break, so, make a new one.
Right on. Well, take a moment to remind everybody who's watching this live that if they have questions for Jimmy, they can go ahead and ask away, because that's one of the biggest reasons why he's here. But Jim, what else did you want to know about Jimmy?
Oh man, where else can we keep going with this? I mean, yeah, no, there's quite a few things. When we were talking also earlier, I wanted to go into kind of the cultural shift that it takes to get into this sort of thing. I remember from a Reddit AMA, one of the top questions was someone asking, what are your thoughts on people who are who look at your videos and immediately comment about the safety and how X, Y, and Z is not done the right way, and about 10 other small and what I think pedantic, ways to address someone creatively doing something. And I wanted to add on top of that, anytime I see those kind of comments or on your videos or on the other things you create, I often try to see what those people make. And there's really no track record of it. And I'm trying to, I'm beginning to sense a pattern. I want to know if you see this pattern too, where I feel that the internet culturally is very focused on being factually correct, but not with any experience on that correctness. It's almost like, well, I saw it in a book, so it's got to be true. Yeah. And I feel like that's at odds with what it takes to make anything, because you have to kind of drop all of those preconceived notions about doing something, especially when you're first starting off, because you can read things all day and still not have a clue that, you have to sand in this certain pattern or otherwise it's going to be extra rough, or you have to use this kind of wood because, like we were just talking about the axe handle. I mean, some people would just be like, oh, well, you want to use hickory for that. But if you made like 10 handles and you realize one odd one broke, all of a sudden that goes out the door.
I think, I know I'm going to sound, I don't know what kind of philosophy I'm about to impart, but I think life is a crapshoot. I could spend all day long wearing the dust mask and having the right collector and having the correct equipment, and then I walk outside and an air conditioner falls on my head. So, you can only do so much for yourself. Humans are constantly crashing into one another and causing accidents for each other that are completely out of our own personal individual control. In the shop, I do the best I can. I keep my fingers out of moving parts as often as I possibly can. Every once in a while, it doesn't happen. But I think safety is everyone's own personal comfort level and comfort zone. You got to do what works for you. If you're grinding all night long and you start spitting out metal dust, you're like, oh, maybe I should have wore a mask, next time you wear a mask. So it's, ask me how I know that. I think it's a personal thing. You got to really, what you're comfortable with. If you're going to weld all night long and you wear a t-shirt and no gloves, the next morning you're going to have a really bad tan and you're going to say, oh, wow, I guess I don't want to tan like that again. You got to cover up. We learn but there are guys on Reddit specifically and a lot of YouTube commenters. I don't get too many guys anymore because they know they're going to be drummed out of the neighborhood. But if people come on and you could tell there's so many people online, especially Reddit, that are book smart. They read so much about something, but they never actually do it. And there's a couple of YouTubers who I'm not going to say any names, but they're really, really book smart, but they don't have any practical experience. And you could tell that because their projects just don't exist. Every week they put out a video about, how to do one little stupid thing in a shop, like take a bolt out of something, and they never actually build anything, and they never show anybody anything they build, but they're smarty pants and they know everything, but they never actually make anything. And, that's the life they want to live. They want to walk around and tell everybody how they're going to live and how to do things, but always by the book, but never actually prove themselves because they're too afraid to show it on camera. That's the life they lead. But, if they want to pick on other people, they really should look at themselves first.
Yeah,
and
those folks exist, I find, in every creative community. I've been a part of photographic forums online, and there are people who are very active parts of those communities that never post anything but sharpness charts or pictures of their cats. Which, speaking of which, I did have one question. When are we going to see Spike again?
Oh yeah.
Spike, he's in here somewhere sleeping. Well, Dave's away. Dave's like my co-producer when it comes to the tips and the mail time stuff. So it's I kind of thought about getting into the spirit of a tips video, but it won't have the same energy without Dave. So when Dave comes back, I'll get him into a tips video. But I could take a minute and go get Spike when we have a little break in action. He sleeps on the couch in the house all the time. This is my new cat. So if anybody's been following me on Snapchat, this is Timber.
Aww.
She sleeps on the table all the time. We found her. We went to go look at the property that I couldn't afford in upstate New York, and she was sleeping under the building. And the guy said, "Take her. We don't want her."
She's fantastic.
Oh, Snapchat. That's actually a really good thing I wanted to lead into. You were talking about, I think about a year or so ago, how Snapchat is great for the fact that when it comes to tips and little tricks about stuff, it's really hard to remember, and like it's kind of like going up to someone and saying, "Well, tell me a funny joke." And it's like, well, you got to be in the moment sometimes. And you're telling with like tips and stuff, it's just great to be able to do a Snapchat where you just have it in your phone there and be like, "Hey, I was working on this. This is a great way to do this." And
I've been doing that a lot, and it's really it's great. I get a lot of really good followers on Snapchat, and it's also an easy way for me to communicate with somebody. They want to ask me a direct question. I go through blocks of time where it's like I spend an hour just answering questions on Snapchat, and then I won't go back to it for a week, but then I'll go back and answer questions. So I'm in and out. And then also if there's like a good string of events taking place, like last week, I had 5 students and the teacher from Mexico City. They came from a design school in Mexico to hang out with me for 3 days. I Snapchatted the whole 3 days, and we had a lot of fun. And I Snapchat in the middle of me doing the things I accidentally hit memories. So now all my videos are in memories, which means I don't know where to get them back into my phone.
Oh, no.
So,
well, the interface of Snapchat is a bit mystifying.
I tried to upload, download, export. None of it's working. If you open my phone right now, it says exporting 300 snaps. It's been exporting for 3 days, and the bar hasn't moved. So I don't know what. I think I have to delete the app and reinstall it. But I don't know what my password is, so I'm afraid to do that.
Well, I wonder if anyone in the comments might reveal some answers to that.
Yeah, if you have any Snapchat help for Jimmy, shoot those his way.
Your reward will be more Snapchats.
Just an awesome question, I think from a good buddy of yours, Dirty Smith, which is that every maker has something that they hold on to in the back of their head of like a real landmark achievement. In their creative path. Anything that stands out for you, something like that?
Yeah, there's been a few, but the one that's most cherished, it's sitting in my bedroom right now, is this. I've talked about it, and I made this seahorse. My dad got me in front of the jigsaw, and he drew out this seahorse. And I made this seahorse when I was 9 years old, and it was the first time I made something that I really wanted to keep, and I was very proud of, and I still have it. And that moment in time, I was like, wow, I could really make stuff if I want to.
That's the threshold, really. I mean, because if you go, what video was that? The Ira Glass on Good Taste, which is a great video for anyone who hasn't watched that. It's been circulated around, and I see the quote all the time. But he goes into detail about exactly what you just said there, which is the idea that you're going to spend many years making something that is just not up to your standard, and it's going to be frustrating. And he wishes that people would tell, people who are starting off that just push through that part, because one day you will make something to what you've built as your standard for yourself. That's actually something that Chuck Jones, animator for Warner Brothers, said about creative process, is that you have to set these standards for yourself, and you usually do by just developing a taste. You see things that you like and you remember them. So what you're pointing out is the example of you crossing that threshold, going from I actually want to keep this, where in your mind you created the standard that you wanted to live up to, and you finally do. That is such a satisfying moment.
And then more lately with some of my knife builds, which I've never really made knives. I kind of got inspired to make knives because of my fans, because a lot of my fans are making really beautiful knives, with the proper metallurgy, attempts and all that stuff. I'm learning all that, so I could make a good looking knife. Will it shave forever? Probably not yet. But as I get into it, I'm learning more about hardening. But I'm not letting that stop me. So that goes back to the example of like, oh, you didn't harden it correctly. I'm like, that's one aspect that isn't even part of what anybody could see with their own eyes. You give me no credit for the hour I just spent making this beautiful shape that I'm proud of. Oh, you didn't harden it correctly, so it's going to be pointless. If I came here and I stuck it directly in your chest, I'm sure you probably would go, I guess that's sharp enough. So there's, again, like the metallurgy nerds, or just like there's another group of guys that are just all book smart. Some of them obviously are skilled at what they do. But, like one thing I loved about, and I'm going to get to spend some time with him this week, is Jody from Welding Tips and Tricks. Jody is like the best welder on all of YouTube, and probably the smartest welder and the most technologically knows the most technological stuff about welding. when he commented on one of my videos, I remember reading the comment and I got like hot and sweaty. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to know I'm a fraud. But it was the first time we ever had this little interaction. And he wrote to me, he's like, great job. And I said, wow, thanks. I go, I don't know at all what I'm doing. He goes, it doesn't matter. You're doing it. And that's what's important.
That is the difference. That's the difference right there.
So like Jody is a total class act. And, right there for him to say that, it's like, wow, I can be as good as him if I just practice. Instead of me going, you know what? Why am I even trying? This guy's just going to drum me out of the neighborhood.
That is exactly. I'm really glad you said that, because that's something that I've noticed about anytime I run. More often than not, when you run into people who are incredibly talented, people that you see their work and you're just blown away by it, and if they happen to see what you do, almost every time, I'd say just about every time, if they have something to say about your work, it's almost always positive, because they know what it took and they remember where they were when they were doing that. And it's that's the difference, really, is kind of, versus people who are like, well, you're doing it wrong. And it's like, yeah, then the person who knows how to do it right and has done it right for 15 years tells you, well, you're just started.
Again, there's some guys that are in public. I get some amazing emails. I mean, I get emails that make me cry when I'm home alone reading them, but I get some amazing emails from some knife makers too that say, dude, when you did this, you did exactly right. Next time, just do this a little bit more. You got to get this a little, so these are guys that are like, nudging me along because they love what I do. And they're like, you do this and you're just going to get it right in the ballpark. So those guys, like I could hug them if I see them, because it gives me the ability to like try it again and, remember the few things they emailed me and send me the pictures that they sent me, not publicly, but when publicly it happens and it's good, it's also great too, because people are like, oh my God, Jody's commenting on Jimmy's videos. Isn't he a horrible welder? And, Jody will be like, no, he's welding. He's learning.
I'm really glad you pointed that out too, because that's another really important thing, especially for any of you listening out there. When you see something that you really like, tell them why you like it. Tell them what you appreciate about what they do, because it's very, the long process of making stuff comes with a lot of ups and downs, and there's a lot of moments where it's just good to know that other people recognize what you're doing, and they recognize that, they're not. And it's the best advice usually comes from people like that, especially like you pointed out with people who see you as who are either inspired by you, want to inspire back. They're like, hey, I knew this, and it's always friendly. It's always very supportive, because they know what it takes to get to that and get beyond that.
Yeah. And then just another comment on people that publicly criticize. I mean, thankfully, I'm mature enough to know that the minute somebody publicly criticizes or makes fun of the fact that I write my name on everything and doesn't see the work, I say, wow, I'm so glad I'm not that person. They really have to live with themselves, and, their wives and family and friends have to live with them. Boy, wow. And I really, like I said, I thank the fact that I'm mature enough and I have friends around me that have developed, that I've developed with, the intellectualness, because I know where I came from. I know where I came from on Long Island, and I came from a very sheltered community of, people that don't like anybody that's different. And, now I feel like I've matured to a point where, like, I could read a comment like that and I can go, wow, I would feel really bad for this guy. He really, he couldn't see anything good in this. He only saw this. And, he sees the fact that, like I write my name on too many things, or that I didn't harden the metal correctly. Wow, he really can't see anything? Boy, he must be leading a miserable life.
Yeah.
Delete.
The creative process is really hard, and it needs a lot of feeding. So going back to that, if you see somebody that is doing cool stuff, even if it's not quite right, let them know. Let them know you're really inspired by what they're doing. Had another awesome question from Bill Lavolsi in the Twitch chat, One Car Workshop. He wanted to know if you've ever had a failure or a mistake in your workshop where you were glad it happened.
Ooh, that's a good question. Thanks for that question. That's a good one.
Yeah, no, Bill's a bro. That is a good question. Every day when little failures happen, it's like, when you like have a kitten or a mouse and you're trying to get it into that hole, every one of those mistakes is you bumping off the wall, getting to your goal. So if it's a little mistake or a big mistake, they all feed to the common goal of being successful at whatever it is you're doing. So, there have been moments in time where I've invested in something and it's worked out, and I've invested, time or money in something and it hasn't worked out. And I'm like, wow, I'm glad that only cost me this much to get out of that. And now I know I'll never do that again. So I can't think of any specific examples right now. Bill, when I do, I'll write you and tell you. But the idea that like life is just like walking through the dark and bouncing off of stuff and bouncing off of trolls until you know the people and the things you want to do.
Got another one from Twitter. Dan the Maker Man asking, which build did you learn the most from?
Which what?
Which build?
Oh, which build? I'll tell you, I learned a tremendous amount about axe building, and making axe handles. I've made some off camera too. I've obviously made a few on camera. But the very first axe I made, which, I mean, at this point I'm not very proud of, I made an axe handle out of like a wenge wood. And, when I look back at that axe, it's ugly and it's not shaped correctly. But, and I did it all wrong. But I just made an axe handle and I had no idea. I was like, oh, I'm making an axe handle. And boy, the axe nerds came out in full force on me. And I hadn't even know there was an axe nerd culture at that point. And boy, oh boy, I'm like, you would have thought that I just, defiled somebody's mother in public. And they really got down on me. And then I really started paying closer attention to how axes are made. And so that, I really took a beating on that. It's still up. It's on my channel somewhere. It's about 3 years ago. And since then, I stepped my game up because I started paying closer attention. I still do my techniques that are non-traditional, which still get people irked. I can make a perfect axe handle, and people will be like, "Oh, that's beautiful. You used a bandsaw? You can't use a bandsaw." I recently did a talking about like if it's not done with hand tools, it's not pure and honest. And then I'll say to the person that'll critique me, then why did you just hop on your motorcycle and drive here? Why didn't you get behind your one-horse carriage and get over here with your horse carriage? Technology has increased in every facet of life, but for some reason, woodworking and hand tools, it's not acceptable to use electric. It's not acceptable to use a bandsaw. It's not, you have to use draw knives and scrapers. Otherwise, it's not legitimate. However you get there is how you get there. It's whatever works for you.
Yeah, legitimacy I've often found is an arbitrary construct, and it's not something that's necessarily framed by anything reasonable. It's usually just framed by a mass opinion that doesn't necessarily have to have fact behind it. But yeah, no, that's a really good point. But I also wanted to point out that you took a beating from that community, but you also mentioned how you learned a lot from that beating, which I want to, without bearing the lead, want to highlight that if I'm not mistaken, that your education through art school probably well prepared you for critique to take, from opinions what is valuable and be able to send that back through the cycle. And that's something that I often don't hear, that I would love to hear a little bit more about, how important it is to understand critique and know what's a valuable critique and what isn't.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, like, I could smell when somebody's put some stank on it, because they have some their own egotistical problems that they're working through. And, they might be threatened by the fact that I do things a certain way, but then when I see somebody, is like, oh my God, like, for instance, a perfect example again is Jody, who, I'd never be able to weld as much as him or know his technological, his dictionary. I would never be able to even achieve it. But when he says, wow, that's great, you're in the game, that's awesome. Hey, next time, why don't you use this wire or use this speed or use this voltage? I'd be like, oh man, that's awesome. But when someone's like, ha, you don't even know what you're doing. What do you think? It's like, it's kind of like, all right, that's somebody that should, needs to go to the doctor, as opposed to someone that's can be a teacher.
I think the key phrase there is next time. Is the difference between someone just laughing it off versus, hey, you did this, but the next time you do it, how about this? Like, I think that's really what it takes, right?
Yeah, I got once somebody commented, and it made me laugh. Somebody said you should kill yourself.
Yikes!
Somebody commented that in one of my videos a long time ago. It just said you should kill yourself.
There wouldn't be much of a next time for that one, I'd say.
I was like, wow, boy, I guess you're not a teacher. It's funny. It brings up something. I have I spent a lot of time with magicians for a really long time, and one of my mentors, two of my mentors, three actually, are magicians. One full time. That's why I hesitated. But three of my mentors are magicians, and they always would classify people that they meet as audience members or performers. And so, are you an audience member or are you a performer? And so I always thought that was really cool. So, audience members sometimes are people that throw tomatoes, hence trolls. And performers, Jody, are people that bring you up and say, hey, come on, let's work on the stage together. So
That's a really good way to look at it, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Were there any other great questions out there?
Kind of scanning over here. Here's.
I'm not near the computer, so I'm not ignoring the questions. I just can't see them.
I know that we had one question from earlier on. If you don't mind me asking one a little bit more about your personal life, somebody was asking about when you and Taylor got together, and they think you guys are an awesome couple.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. Taylor is 20 years younger than me. It's a big, everyone's always trying to figure it out whether we're father and daughter or not. But Taylor is younger than me. She's 28 and I'm 49. So we met 6 years ago when she was 22 and I was 43. And she came to me, a mutual friend of ours said, she was making shoes, wooden shoes. And she said, I need a bandsaw. Do you know anybody with a bandsaw? And then this friend knew both of us. So our friend Allison coerced us to work together, and we started working together in the shop. And it took a while for us to develop a romance, and it didn't happen right away. And when it did, we started realizing, we were good for each other. She really has gotten me out of my shell. The reason I'm on YouTube is because she said I should go to YouTube and stop working on TV.
Wow.
So the world can credit Taylor with that. She said to me after my last experience on TV, which was Discovery Channel, she's like, TV is dead. She's like, go to YouTube. Do it yourself. But at the point in my mind, I was like getting over the idea of like, I got to make every video myself. I want a production company to do it. I don't want to do it. But then once I started doing it, now it's second nature, and it was the best decision in my entire life. But in hindsight, that friend that introduced us, she thought, like, even though she just introduced us as like a technical, hey, this person needs bandsaw work, you guys should meet. She had like a little matchmaker behind the scenes thing going on that neither one of us are aware of. So Allison is to blame. Thank you, Allison.
Another good one from the Twitch chat here is any new skills that you're looking to learn that you haven't put together on a project yet?
Ooh.
Blacksmithing, I keep talking about that. And, Rory has been a big inspiration because Rory's the first blacksmith teacher online that I thought really disseminates information without any stank. A lot of blacksmiths, say how it should be. It's like a macho thing. And watching Rory Dirty Smith, really, again, it's like nurture as opposed to, critique. So I was happy to find him, and we've since developed a friendship, which is awesome. Which is the greatest thing about YouTube is that me and Jody can develop a friendship because we're like-minded, and we could discuss things that we have in common. And but blacksmithing and lately I've been thinking about hydraulics. I wanted to start experimenting around a little bit with like hydraulics, and I've been looking for a big tractor to buy. I was going to buy and restore this one tractor, but I made an offer and I didn't get it. So I'm going to eventually find one. So playing around with, people say, what do you like to do for a pastime? Lately, playing around with mechanics and wrenching on my old truck upstate, stuff like that is fun. And I actually contemplated the idea. I have this truck, and some of my real fans know, my long-term fans know, the trash picker is this old truck I'm fixing up on my property upstate, and the motor runs, but it's not a very healthy motor. It blows a lot of smoke, which means it needs a lot of work. And so I thought about the idea of buying like a 350 crate motor for like $1,000 and putting it into this completely rotted machine, just to fan the flames of the trolls to get everybody mad at me, but also just to learn how to install a motor in a car, which is something I never did.
Oh, it is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's also. So
I was going to buy like a brand new $2,000 motor and put it into a car that's worth 50 cents and just to have fun.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds like my life right now, actually. So it's fun. Totally do it. Like the whole time as you're lowering things in, you're like, why am I doing this? Nope, just keep going. Just keep going.
Yeah.
No, it's that's really great. I honestly cannot wait to I'm looking forward to that. I really want to see it because I'm sure you're going to pick up on a lot more things than I could ever pick up on that, because I'm such a novice with this stuff, and the only reason why I don't make videos myself on it frequently is because how comically bad they would be. They will be better, but not. We'll wait until I get a few basics out the door before I commit myself to that. There was one other thing that I wanted to bring up that I think was really interesting that we were touching on a little bit earlier, was are there any other YouTubers, not ones that you already know, that you've seen their channel and you're like, I want to collaborate with them? Like you know, like any shout out that you want to give that you're just like, hey, let's work together on something. Like,
well, I want to work together with everybody, and it's always just a time crunch. I mean, I'm like trying to work out schedules with people right now, but I want to just acknowledge his tweets and also answer the question. Artisma is, I'm talking about, I'm looking at his right now. Artisma, thank you very much for your tweet. He says something that's great. Constructive criticism is only constructive if the criticizer is equally or more experienced than the receiver. That sounds like a Frank Zappa quote, but but that is true. And then he also asked me, have you found certain days better than others for uploading a video? I like to upload on a Sunday because I feel people, it's also because I'm the most relaxed when it's like, oh, you know, I don't have to work tomorrow. I could sit at the computer till 4 in the morning and upload at 5 in the morning. And that's usually why, because like I usually try to take a Sunday as a day to chill. But I like all YouTubers, and I bring up Artisma because he's does some really great, cool stuff with all different materials. And I would love to work with everybody. Me, Bob, and Dave, we all met because we were going to do a project together. We were going to collaborate and like build something and spin it one over, spin it one over, and spin it one over, and we'd end up with 9 videos. But we ended up making a podcast instead. But it's just a matter of logistics. Like I've tried to work with other YouTubers, and you know, projects sit in my basement forever until I actually get to them. So it's hard to collaborate when everyone logistically is far apart. But when we get together in community environments, like we've done at a couple of wood shows, man, there's nothing more rewarding than that. It's just a great time just hanging and chilling with people.
Sounds like something we should do for Maker Faire then.
Yeah, get some YouTubers together.
Yeah, for sure. One other question I wanted to ask you is that when you are feeling, you know, like you're a bit of in a creative rut or just creatively exhausted, like what do you go to fill that tank up again?
I go to garage sales or flea markets. Anytime I go to the flea market, I'm on the search for a video. So now, I mean, obviously now that my life is content creation, it's like anytime I go into Harbor Freight, I'm like, okay, content creation. Anytime I walk into a flea market, I'm like, okay, content creation. In fact, this week you guys will see me make this ring, which I keep holding up to the camera. That's the video I made for Make. That's going to be, you know, when you get it up, Tyler. And there's a little hammer I use. It's got a leather face on it. I bought it the other day for $8 at a flea market. It's a little lead hammer with a wooden handle. And I said, oh, wow, I can't wait to pound on some metal with this little thing. And so any little tool I buy inspires something. And of course, I get into ruts, but they don't last too long. It's not going to be like, I have tons of notebooks. Let me see. Behind me, I have, if you can see above me, right here, those are all notebooks that are live. Any one of those notebooks has 25 ideas in them. And they're just little bits and pieces of information. I have this notebook, which is, I showed this to the camera once, but you know, I do a brain dump when I'm on an airplane, and which I'll be on an airplane tomorrow going down to see Jody. And when I do a brain dump, you know, I end up with these many ideas. And so every one of those lines is a different video concept, which I mean, you see there's only like 3 of them are crossed out. So it's all a matter of how you execute it. So when I say bottle cap video, what does that mean? There's 1,000 ways to skin that definition. So that's why I only just put down words until I'm really ready to make the video. Then I start doing drawings.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know creative blocks is something that I never really run into. You could always like, I could always make something that somebody else made in my own fashion. So when I'm like totally down and out and I'm like, you know what, let me make a magazine rack. How would I make a magazine rack? Let me go make a stool. How would I make a stool? So any YouTubers out there that find that they run into blocks, just go out and make something that somebody else made, but do it in your own style. Say, hey, I was inspired by this guy, Tim Sway, made this, so now I want to make it, you know?
That's,
and, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the particularly the airplane thing was a good, awesome tip. Listening, I think, just recently to the Adam Savage podcast, and he just did a flight to Australia, and he was like, airplane flights are the best thing for him because, especially if they don't have the internet connected, because that just gives them a chance to unplug, disconnect, and then just...
It never works anyway. Every time you're on a JetBlue flight, the internet is now active for everybody except for seat 19B, what Jimmy's doing.
Yeah, it's a really good place because you're cornered. You know you're like a little sardine that spits out ideas given the opportunity. yeah, I mean, that's kind of the best way to come up with certain ideas, because there's nothing really else you can do or make best use of your time. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's a great little tip. I do it a little bit myself. I don't get as big of a list as you have, but work from somewhere.
I have a couple of quick questions I can answer. Any Arduino projects? Arduino is like a total mental block for me. I literally have navigated my entire life without needing anything to be operated by an Arduino. One day I will, and that will pop for me. It hasn't popped for me yet. I'm like, hey, let me make an axe. Wait, I don't need an Arduino for that. All right, I guess I don't need an Arduino. So my biggest watch videos are where I make tools or weapons, and so no Arduinos needed for them just yet. And then somebody else asked, who are the YouTubers that I look forward to watching? It's funny, I don't know everybody's name, but I just go through my feed and I just see who's posted. I mean, David and Jocko this summer, they both had me hooked. I wanted to see what they did every day. Laura Kampf, Tim Sway, these guys, and I binge watch people, so I won't watch them. I'll know, I was like, oh, this one put out a video, that one put out a video. But, I just watch everybody in the community. I really just want to try and support everybody. I guess I watch Casey Neistat most of the time, just because he's like an ongoing show. And I do learn stuff from his stuff, some technical stuff, which I otherwise would avoid, about cameras and drones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I'm kind of cornered right now. I can't come up with I'm kind of drawing a blank.
Yeah, there's always new people to discover too. Like I just a couple weekends ago, I was just sitting down to kind of catch up with a bunch of people's YouTube channels, and then came across Cactus Workshop, which is a wonderful channel that I'd never even heard of before, and an awesome body of work there. And I'm looking forward to catching up on all of their videos. And it's an awesome community, and I love how supportive everybody is of everybody, and how much cool stuff there is out there. Which I guess, unfortunately, we're getting about the time that we got to wrap this thing up. Yeah, Jimmy, was there anything else that you wanted to say to folks out there, or anything else you wanted to get out there?
No, just thank you for the love and support, and it's been a great ride, and the best thing about being on YouTube is that the videos are there forever, and no one's ever going to cancel me. And they're there forever. So unless YouTube goes out of business, I'm not taking them down. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Speaking of YouTube, we actually just got a new video from Jocko. We just put that up today. He's making a little keychain that's a on-the-go phone charger. You'll see Jimmy's video about the ring. That Jimmy, if you want to show that ring off again, we're going to have that up on YouTube and on the site on Thursday, and we have a couple of exciting more things coming up here on Twitch. The biggest thing that we're looking forward to next is Maker Faire Detroit. We're going to do another really big show there.
Oh, cool.
Jim and I are both going to be there. We're going to be having stuff from the stage show there. We're going to be seeing all kinds of stuff out in the lot. We're going to have live racing, not live from tape, but for real live racing from the Power Racing series. Yeah. We're super excited about that. We're going to be showing off the Megabots, which is that, if you've seen the YouTube commercials for the U.S. versus Japan Combat Robot Challenge, they're going to be out there, and we're just going to have a ton of other cool stuff out there. So we're super excited about that. We also have the next one of these coming up, although now at an undetermined date. We were originally going to be planning on August 2nd, but then I realized, wait, all my equipment from Maker Faire Detroit is not going to be back here in the office by that time yet. But that is with... that's with the author of this book. This is Make Fire. The author is Tim Deegan, and he's a pyrotechnics artist, does a lot of stuff with propane and making cool fire art at things like Burning Man and Maker Fairs. So we're going to be super excited to have him on here and showing off his creative process and his techniques and all that. Cool. Jim is about to hold up Make Magazine Volume 52?
Volume 52, yeah. Volume 52, which we sent out a few weeks ago. Theme is virtual reality, and mostly focusing a really good feature that we had going to Valve and checking out the development for the Vive. And not about the final product, but more about the process it took to get to the final product. There are a lot of prototypes that we captured and are showing, everyone out there that, a many hundreds of dollars expensive, wonderful, wizardly toy with a box of mystery that you put on your face came from, $50 worth of parts that you could get anywhere.
Yeah.
And we want, this piece is really great because it demystifies that. It kind of gives people idea of the kind of creative process it took to get there. And also, one of my favorite features for a project is this Raspberry Pi photo booth in the shape of a novelty camera. With Volume 52, you can check that out. We're busy away working on Volume 53, which I think I can say is about food hacks. So
I make a knife. I think my knife is in that episode.
Yeah. I mean, we have the YouTube video for that up, but you also get to see the article and see photos of how it was made and a lot of other cool stuff there. Of course, if you're looking to see stuff like this out in the real world, like we mentioned, Detroit Maker Fair is going to be happening on July 30th and 31st at the Henry Ford Museum. So if you're in the area there, please come out and say hello. And otherwise, you can always catch up with everything we do online at makescene.com. So come by and say hello there. Check out our YouTube channel. Check out Jimmy's YouTube channel.
Thank you.
And Jimmy, where else can people catch up with you on there?
Follow me on Snapchat. From time to time, I have a good long stream. I take a couple days to just talk about fun stuff. And I'm on Instagram, always putting up previews of preliminary stuff leading up to video publication. So I always show at least 4 or 5, sometimes 2 or 3 images of a process before the video is published. So there's always just to kind of get people interested in what I'm doing. And Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter. You can ask me questions directly on Twitter. I pretty much answer mostly everything back. And somewhere in the world, my email is online. I don't know exactly where, but people always find it. And my phone number's in a couple videos, too. If you feel like texting me, just say hi. Don't expect an answer, but you can say hi.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jimmy. It's been awesome catching up with you and seeing where things are at for you. Anything you otherwise got immediately coming down the pipeline?
Just making more videos. I got my canoe series, which I haven't even started yet. My Snapchatters have seen me pick up the canoe. I picked it up from the east end of Long Island. It's actually from Canada, but because they ship a lot of canoes to the east end of Long Island, they just threw mine in that bundle, so I went out and picked it up. And so Bear Mountain Boats is a good family friend of mine, and so I'm going to be making a Bear Mountain boat canoe, which is the very same company that Nick and I did our video for in 2009. So you could see Nick Offerman before he became Ron Swanson building a canoe. Some of those videos are on the Bear Mountain Boats YouTube channel, but you could also buy the DVD on Amazon where you see the full. I shot that with Nick years and years ago, so now I'm going to finally make my own canoe. It's going to be probably a 5 or 6 episode series.
Fantastic. So, all right. Well, thank you again for joining us, Jimmy. And we look forward to catching up with you again, hopefully in the not too distant future. And also, thank you for joining us here in this live stream. And if you are interested in catching up with the next one, I would love to tell you the date for that, but I got to figure out when I can get my stuff back from Detroit before I can commit to a date for that. So follow us on Twitter, and you'll hear about that coming up. But it'll be in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We're planning on that show being every other week. We're hitting alerts with the Detroit Maker Fair there, but it'll be happening really soon, and we'll pick up a good proper pace after that. Anyhow, also Jim, thank you for joining us on the show here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks to you out there for all of your awesome questions, and we will be catching up with you in a lot of different ways very soon. Thank you.